Good morning, good evening, everybody. Thank you once again for tuning in to listen to these little podcasts about AI and project management. I'm so happy today to speak to Peter Taylor. Peter, for me, is one of my sort of heroes in this space around AI and project management. I think he understands why. He's certainly somebody that's been in this space for a long, long time and speaks a lot of sense. But Peter, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
No, I can't improve upon that. He speaks a lot of sense. That's it. We're done in the bag here. Yeah. So I mean, my background has been project management for many years, and I've had the pleasure of last 20 years the pleasure of designing and building probably some of the largest PMOs in the world. Work for an organisation right now called Dayforce. We've got 200 project managers around the world working on 1,000+ projects at any given time. So building the team, doing that work has been amazing. But in 2009, I created an alter ego because I wanted to start speaking, I wanted to start writing, and due to an insult, and we could explore that if you like, but my manager at the time insulted me and called me the laziest person ever. From that was born a book called The Lazy Project Manager, which is about working smarter, not harder. So in parallel since 2009, I've had, if you like, the day job, and I've also done over 500 presentations around the world in 27 countries and quite a few books. And so, yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. And I know from first-hand experience, and I obviously haven't read all of your books, but I have read the AI and project management one. And Peter, when did you publish that book, by the way?
Oh, goodness me, to AI and project management. That was probably 3 years ago now, I think, something like
Gotcha,
that. Yes.
gotcha.
Yes. I mean, the purpose of it was, at the time, I was kind of worried because, we were beginning to see the big headlines from, the classic one that, AI will be dominating in 2030, that kind of stuff coming out from various people. And it seemed to me, my profession was being very quiet about it. Obviously, with what I do in my spare time, I go to and attend a lot of conferences around the world. At the time, it took a year to write the book, so let's go back 4 years. There just didn't seem to be enough conversation going on. And I was thinking, this is going to be huge. Why are we talking about this? Now, the opposite's true now. We know that. So, is it over talked about? I'm not sure. But certainly the book was written to stimulate conversation around the potential of AI and the impact it will have on project management.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things you said there. I think it was only yesterday somebody had posted on LinkedIn Gartner's speculation, and they'd found it on their phone, and it was like a picture from 2017 of these things that Gartner technology wise was speculating by, and at the time I think it was 2020, and it was so far off the mark, and I do wonder, it was Gartner I think you were referring to, about
it was
so
the updated
much
Gartner one where they moved it to 2030 and 80% of what you do as a project manager is going to be done by AI. That one everybody quotes, yeah.
And I wonder whether it's one of these things that over promises in the short term and under delivers, and whether that is something that will continue. And and we were just before we started recording talking about everybody's talking about AI and project management. Do you see that as a reflection that maybe there's so much noise with not necessarily the use cases behind it, as it were?
Well, yeah, the use cases are a really good question. And are there really use cases? And there's also understanding. I mean, one of the things I learned in the book was AI it's a vast beast in what it is. And obviously when I started, it's before ChatGPT even turned up and got people really excited. So beginning to understand the components of what AI is, and realizing that some stuff was already there. Chatbots we all know about. Anybody who uses Amazon has probably used a chatbot, and it's a very seamless process, I've always found. But then going on to the kind of machine learning stuff and the concept of the future state of an autonomous project manager, interesting debate. But I think there is so much. It is hype. I mean, there's a lot of hype going out there. We were talking before we started the recording, but I'm going to bring it back again.
Yeah,
there's a lot of experts out there suddenly, and I don't declare myself. I'm not an expert in AI. I'm passionate about project management, and I believe if AI delivers what it can deliver, it's going to make a big difference to project managers. And I'm very honest with people. I think AI, if we get it right, we'll do all of that boring stuff that I used to hate doing as a project manager, the tedious stuff, and get my essence of that book I summarize is it will allow project managers to get back to doing what they should be doing, which is getting the best out of people. Projects are about people. So it's freeing up individuals to go and spend their time on that. And that's my real hope for the future. But I think the problem where we are right now, it's just so much going on, and it's very technical, and it's all spinning around, and there isn't a consolidated view at this point in time, or a consolidated approach. But I talked to a lot of suppliers. Every one of them has got AI somewhere in their spiel.
And
it's a very, let's just say it's a varying degree of truth, I believe.
Absolutely. Snake oil, I think, is the phrase that I keep hearing. You made a couple of really interesting points there about hype as well, and I'm just going to relate that back to ChatGPT, Gen AI side, because in my opinion, it's very easy to stand up something that looks quite flash, looks quite, leading edge, using tools of a Gen AI nature. And I have a slight concern there that, when a person leaves the organization, maybe they leave this sort of spider's web of complexity behind them because it was never productionized, as it were. But that balance between actually, there's probably a good little use case there that's been delivered, and getting that balance right. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it is. I think it is getting the balance right. I mean, and also overcoming. We can come back to this, perhaps. Overcoming some of the barriers to what's going on as well. I'm quite happy, talk about some of the things that my own PMO have kind of tried to explore and some of the challenges we have there. But I think, whenever we looked in the marketplace, and tried to pursue use cases, they haven't been forthcoming at this point in time. There's a conceptual value, absolutely, and I think that so we've kind of gone back, and I think the things that we are actively pursuing that we do believe will bring value to us in the short term are, some of the, I'm going to mention brands now. Obviously, clearly there are other brands out there available, but for example, Teams Premium for us, so I work in a global environment. Most of our people are remote in the organization that work on our projects. So being able to connect people and save time through the automation of minutes and actions from meetings, we think is going to be a significant save in time and effort, and in all honesty, more accuracy. Now, there's a counter to that. We work with customers, obviously, and our projects are client facing for the most part. You're suddenly going to have, the perfect audit trail. So, culture number one, be careful what you actually say, what you put down. The old days of what, wow, did you say that in the meeting or not? You can't get away with it now. It means, as you said, there's like we're doing it now. There's a transcript that's going to be available immediately. It can summarize into the key points. It can produce, really smart output. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. The other area we're looking at is language. Naturally, we're I work for a North American company. Our business language is English, but we work around the world, and so whilst everybody speaks English, I recognise, having done this for many years, that's always a challenge for people, and understanding is not always immediate. So some of this stuff that's going on out here about translations, for example, into our training material, the ability to produce 10 languages like that as an output, the ability to auto-translate as you're on a call, incredibly powerful. So these are enablers of business, but we can use them in the project management world, but they're not really AI and project management. And that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And so I'm going to go all the way back to your book again, because if people haven't read it, can I encourage you to read it? Because it talks about machine learning and other elements of what is under the AI umbrella, and it's a really good reference. If you as a listener to today want to go back and understand AI, I'll encourage you to do that, because it's really great and it's really well written as well. The use cases that you talk about there, they're almost, for me, the low hanging fruit. Am I allowed to say that?
They are.
The low hanging fruit to get going, and I can imagine from an efficiency point of view, if your organization wanted to drive it in such a way that it created a return on investment, dare I say it, you don't have to have somebody sitting there recording the minutes and all of that sort of stuff. So there's got to be an effort saving there as well. But I was wondering whether you're pushing even further into that type of stuff. I mean, you mentioned training plan translation, and I was thinking, well, hold on a second. If you've got a project charter or something, you could create a training plan, the first pass training plan, or the first pass comms plan, or something of that nature. Are you really starting to adopt that across the workflow of projects, as it were?
And this, I think we can get back to the challenges now, because that will be, that is, if you like, that is the vision, absolutely. But then let's talk about the challenges. The challenges are that the output, and we have our own internal ChatGPT, for example, and it's increasingly used, but we created our own because putting data into or through any of the sort of public platforms is a no-no. We have many of our clients are restrictive on what we can actually record in that way. There's concern over contractual breaches in that situation. There's, as a global organization, there are companies that do not want data held in certain data clouds in various parts of the world. It's a very, very, it's seen at the moment, it's seen as risky in the sense that we don't know at this point, and therefore the brakes have been put on in a very sensible way. And I think, and I'll give you one example. So because of the excitement and the hype out there, and the availability of some of these things, what happened was an individual in the project world found a tool, a little bit, it did really what I've just described around the kind of Teams meeting type thing. It did that. It recorded and it produced transcripts, which was really nice. However, they didn't understand the kind of licensing constraints, how it works.
Model,
the model. Thank you. Good word. And so what happened was they used it. They invited people to a meeting. As soon as anybody was invited to the meeting, they effectively auto signed up. So now this thing is spreading, and immediately we hit a problem. It was identified that something was inappropriately happening, and not inappropriate content, but inappropriate of, hang on, nobody agreed to this, and we had to shut it down hard and re-educate people, say, love your passion, love your enthusiasm, we do think this is the future and we will get there, but you have to let us internally do the right evaluation and release it in a controlled manner, which is kind of where we are now. So a year later, but that was one part of the problem. It was over enthusiasm out there to get going.
Bizarrely enough, I had that exact issue for myself, where somebody had sent it out using a certain transcripting tool, and the only way you could read the transcript was to get an account. So I didn't get an account. You will love this one. I didn't get an account, yet every time I went to a new meeting, it popped up in the meeting, and it was even trying to unsubscribe was impossible because I didn't get an account in the first place. So I definitely understand that one firsthand. I was wondering, those clients that you were referring to, do you find that even some of them don't want you to record a meeting as well? Do they opt out of that type of stuff?
Well, it's early days, so we haven't really, we're kind of piloting at the moment to see how it works and what the limitations are. So we haven't had that because we've identified a subset, if you like. But that we have to accept that could well be the case. That's the case. Is the fact that we may only be able to use this for internal meetings in some situations. So again, it's a matter of what's the usage. We still think there's time to be saved there, because like any organisation, we have a lot of internal meetings. But I mean, at the moment, as we use it and evaluate it, it's interesting, but it's almost like it's producing too much at the moment. We get the minutes out and they're quite long, and it's like, hang on, we spent half an hour, we agreed 2 things. Why aren't there 2 bullet points? And who's going to action it? So there's progression is required there to actually fine tune it.
Yeah. And we both know there's quite a lot of power being the author as well. I mean, in my younger days, I was often found myself as the PMO manager, being the secretary to whatever the steering group was, and you could sort of steer the minute to a certain direction. Right. Not that I would ever do that, obviously.
Well, no, but when I started out in this, my manager at the time, he gave me some good advice. His biggest advice was, no surprises. You can screw things up, but if you tell me about it beforehand, it's fine. So no surprises. The other one was, he was absolutely own the minutes. Always own the minutes.
Yeah,
because you can
control the rhetoric.
Direct.
Yeah.
Not
Exactly.
Not make things up, but generally direct.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
Yeah. So that kind of influence would disappear if we got a completely neutral, objective output.
And I know it's a micro point we're discussing or debating. It's a micro point, but actually, what we're really talking about there is the human in the loop as well.
Yes.
And about where they stop and start, and to coin a phrase, I think generally people are lazy. And for me, there's a huge risk there that take that meeting minute, it's not even reviewed, it's just sent off to the client,
and that's a great point. It is. So what we're seeing is project managers very excited, fantastic, I don't have to do that job. Well actually you do, which is trying to save you 80% of the time. You still need to look at it and summarize it, but people are going, oh great, I don't have to do it, move on.
Exactly.
Everybody understands that. And naturally with the job I've got, I attend goodness knows how many meetings in a week. And if I looked at the output, it's a small book. So we've got to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a way, that sort of a parallel point about dashboards and insights, that's sort of what we're referring to there. Give me the executive summary, rather than use it ubiquitously on all meetings.
To the point.
Yeah. Which then goes back to the power of the.
I'm sure it will get there. I mean, I'm increasingly impressed. I mean, in my personal life, I use ChatGPT. We can't use it at work, but in my personal life, I can, and I find it an interesting stimulator of ideas. But it did scare me the other day because I asked it to produce a small article in my voice, and I was stunned by the accuracy of what came back in the tone it produced. I mean, I wouldn't use that to actually write something, but I was just measuring the evolution of it.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. I use it. I run a small business, as you know, Peter, and I sort of see it as a non-exec for me, and the ability to fast track and conversational almost, so interacting, toing and froing and steering, as you would hopefully with a highly paid consultant.
Yes, exactly.
An effective consultant as well. I see it like that, and it's been incredible. I found myself the other day, wife lying next to me at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning and sort of saying, oh, thank you for your input. And it was, it might as well have been an avatar on the side of the bed. I'm not sure what my wife would have said about that, but But
I think this is hitting on a key point. We talked about the output from these sort of tools, and you have to intervene the human in the loop. The human in the loop at the front end of that, because if you're just going to ask it a basic question, it's going to come back with a bland response. You have to learn how to interact with it and offer up, take it on a conversational journey, and it will deliver something quite impressive. If you just sit there asking it, what is, you construct something, and then it knows. But I think this touches on where AI can go, I think, because in ChatGPT you can create a profile now, which is like, when I ask you something, I don't want emojis, I don't want hyphens, I don't want big shouty letters or anything like that. I want it in the voice on. And that, I think, is where we have to get to. Is when I talk in the book, and on the presentations I do with it, I kind of talk about the kind of digital partnership between the project manager and the AI. And it's not a matter of, everybody's different. How you're going to interact with AI and how I'm going to interact with AI is going to be different. And so I think it's a matter of like working with the AI to evolve a way of working in good partnership with you, and allowing it then to take the burden on some of the more tedious, repetitive things, and truly become a digital partner.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point you're making, and if I just go big a second and think about the best partnership. So a long time ago, somebody said to me, the greatest commercial partnerships have to be good for both sides, and that can take time to nurture and get the idiosyncrasies of how you work together. And for me, what you're saying there, I totally concur. I'm just going to go back to something you said earlier, and obviously appreciate what you can and can't say about this, but you refer to, well, we've got the vision, we know where we want to be, and of course we've been talking about certain elements of that, but I wondered whether there was any more of that vision that you felt comfortable to share with us, and maybe inspire others.
Well, I think the vision is challenging to talk about, because there's a lot of things that we are exploring, I think, in the company. But let's step out of my company role and into one of my other roles. So I'm actually business advisor to an AI to startup at this point in time, which is PM Assistant .ai, and there's a vision there about how autonomous can we become in the future, and I'm really part of it, because it's I think that will allow me to take me on a journey to learn and understand through an interaction over it's going to be a number of years for sure. But I do think, what is the end point of this? Is it to a degree fully autonomous project management? Is it a significant autonomous partner? I mean, that's obviously the step point in the journey. And I think there has to be, in my mind at the moment anyway, there's probably a subset of project management that could be almost autonomous, with a human in the loop. Absolutely, very a break against the expected workflow, if you like, will trigger a human in the loop. But then there are other things, clearly, building the next Wembley Stadium or something like that. That can't pop in my mind. I can't see it. I can't see how that can become fully autonomous. But a certain part of it can be aided through a number of digital partners, I think, in the future. So, the reason I've got involved in this company is I just want to be part of that journey, if you like, in the closing part of my career. It's very exciting, and trying to keep pace with it is going to be challenging, but stimulating.
Well, I mean, trying to keep pace today, or trying to keep pace with the professional bodies, even, somebody who's completely deeply wedded into this, I struggle to keep pace with what's happening and have a day job and all of that sort of stuff. I think you and I have mentioned this before, and I've talked about the autonomous PM, and I totally concur with your point about the simplicity of the project, or the repeatability of the project is likely to be those areas that are more autonomous sooner. I think also the human in the loop, maybe that human in the loop has a much broader portfolio of when they are the exception.
Yeah, they will. I mean, I can imagine the human in the loop sitting there and overseeing 20 simplistic projects running in parallel, because the likelihood of their need to be involved is going to be minimal in each one, but they're going to be ready to step in. But they have to be a fully competent project manager for sure, in order to be able to do that. And usually the hiccup's going to be when with a human on the other side of the loop is involved, when things go wrong. Something doesn't happen, something's done wrong, something's late, something's misunderstood.
Well, that's kind of interesting, because with the rise of agentic AI agents, it's like, well, will there be a human on the other side? Can the actual move on to the next step? And again, I think it's almost, where does that trigger? Where does that flag happen to the human? And who knows where that's going? And I think the other point was that for me, it's not just simplicity, but it's time as well. If we're talking about even the medium term over the next 20, 30 years, I totally agree with your
Hmm.
Wembley
Yeah.
example. But I wonder, and I'm going to exaggerate now, in 200 years,
Yeah.
I think we'll be in a vastly different place. But if I then come back from that moment in time, because who knows what's going on there, and I think even in those larger, more complex projects, the amount that is autonomous will grow.
Oh, I think it will grow. I think it will grow. Um, and I think the profession then he faces a challenge. I mean,
Yeah,
it will grow. So how do you feel that? I hope to think that it will be filled by project managers having more time to focus on people.
yeah,
I worry it'll be filled by project managers being given more projects and not being able
yeah.
to do that.
Oh,
It's the commercial drive of most companies, isn't it? Well, you've got
yeah,
time, you know.
yeah. I think the other thing that I've started to see, that I concur with your point about the project manager giving more
Mm,
projects, which is sort of, in a way, my earlier example. But I think the other thing that I've seen is the project manager trying to become I think the term hybrid project manager. So no longer do we just need to know Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, or whatever your office suite is, but now we need to know about this tool that can auto generate requirements into test scripts, or
mhm.
this tool that can do an appraisal of how well the team is being. And I get slightly concerned that we're trying to create an army of project managers who are jack of all trades, as it
Yeah,
were.
yeah, right.
What do you have any views on that?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, is it going to, again, in my keynote around this, I question: is this going to devalue project management in the sense that you would just become, as you say, a jack of all trades? And um, I, I don't think that is the case. I don't
Mm,
believe in reality, because I think there's always going to be projects that are going to require this. I mean, when I talk about this, the strata inside organizations, you kind of got business as usual at the lowest
mm,
level. You've
yeah,
got projects as projects at the highest level, but there's this midpoint, which is projects as usual, is the term I use. It's where people
yeah,
have to provide change as part of their day job. And I
yeah,
think any of that group, are going to just want as much help as possible, because they're not full-time project managers, and they've got a day job to do. So anything that's going to help them, guide them in a sensible way with a kind of a minimalist kind of approach to project management, is going to be super
yeah,
powerful and super welcome as well. And
yeah,
that's, I
yeah,
think, it's one of the other interesting things is, you know, the resistance is going to come from I think a decision point in people's minds about being resistant, because this technology, you know, in so many other areas, social media, for example,
yeah,
I use Waze for travel, for example.
yeah,
I've no training. I just,
yeah,
that's useful, therefore I use
yeah,
it. And
yeah,
actually, I'm kind of learning as I go on. Oh, he does
yeah,
that. He does that.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
there is no barrier to using technology, really smart technology right now. And I
yeah,
think the same is going to be true in the project world, as long as it's not in your mindset, is the fact that I'm resistant to this. And
yeah, yeah.
I encourage people not to be resistant to it.
Yeah, I mean, you said it a couple of. First of all, projects as usual. Never heard that term before. Fantastic, love it,
Okay.
as it were. You mentioned a couple of times around freeing us up to interact with
Hmm.
people, and the power skills end or the soft skills end of things. For me, even at that side of things, I think AI can help improve people's soft skills and power skills.
Yeah, yeah.
Them becoming increasingly important. And I just wondered whether you wanted to unpack that point a little bit more.
Well, so I think it's like everything. There's layers. I think the first thing is breaking down communication barriers, and I talked about the translation. Because when you're talking to people, when English isn't their native
Mm,
language, no matter how good they are, and I have calls around. I have the joy of calls first thing in the morning to Asia Pac, and I have calls in the evening to North
yeah,
America, and
yeah,
everything in between. I have to recognise that I get tired on the call. I mean, if you're
yeah,
translating, this is a challenge. So if anything can come out that is going to help alleviate that. I think that's the first thing. So you avoid the misunderstandings. You have better clarification. You have better understanding of how people really feel. Now, I think there's an interesting next step. And again, I worked with a company a while back, which looked at sentiment of teams working together. And it was fascinating, but it was also overwhelming. It was like providing, I think the problem with it was providing too much information. It was overwhelming. And it's kind of like, you've just had a bad meeting. Do you need to be told that this person was, pissed off and this person was happy and these two people weren't looking at each other or whatever? Is that too much? Or do you just step back and go, okay, that, my experience as a project manager means I can step in here and I can think about it and how do I address it? So I think it's a balancing act of how much you want and how much is down to your own personal experience.
Yeah, I just scribbled down because I was thinking about sentiment into and I immediately jumped into empathy, but actually what we're talking about is sentiment jumping into action.
Yes.
And again, I think for me, if we can get the balance of the tools right, using your wave example, that if a tool can, a bit like our transcription point earlier, that we don't want to be overloaded with, we want information, we don't want data, I think if we can get the balance right, I think that would be a fantastic thing. And I know people sort of generally resist that technology can help us become better individuals and define better, but it also made me think about I was speaking to a professor at Boston and she was talking about the AI doctor. You could never get an AI doctor who was more, had a greater bedside manner than a human doctor. And of course there's now tests that have shown that the AI doesn't go tired, has the
and
right
in certain
reasoning.
Parts of the world, in the more remote parts of the world, the ability to actually, have an AI doctor for initial diagnosis is invaluable. So it's, again, it's used in the right area.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, isn't it? That using AI for the benefit, as it were, and not standing, hopefully it's not bias and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, again, for me, there could be great benefit. Now, Peter, we've been chatting for a good half an hour or so now, and I do think we need to sort of draw our conversation towards a close. I just wondered whether, in terms of a takeaway or a summary of your thoughts around AI and project management, you want us to share that with us?
Yeah, happy to do that. I'm going to just go back to which is another point based on what we talked about is, we're back to data. It's down to quality of data. I think the other thing is when we're talking about sentiment, it's about, there's a challenge when you get to individual data. And what is acceptable to store, what is acceptable to know. So just a warning to people that when you're doing this kind of stuff, just think of what is appropriate. And most companies these days, or certainly the larger ones, are increasingly. We have an AI guidance group to help us on that journey to answer these sort of moral questions, really. So just that's a warning, I think.
Although, sorry, we will get to the takeaway, but I just think about what's been happening in the social media world, where data's being collected that we're not aware of. Many years ago, I remember thinking, oh, my phone keeps feeding me these stories that I was talking about the day before. How did that happen? And then of course we've seen the breakdown of some of these ethical panels, as it were. So I think it is a complex web of that stuff about data, but I'm a positive person, Peter, and I just hope that good will outshine evil, as it were, without being too dramatic.
No, I think you're right, and I think that is. It's just that So let's go back to the takeout. I think my takeaway rather is not takeout. My takeaway is that. Do everything you can to learn as much as you can and have an open mind. I think really I know it's that very tired saying that you won't be replaced by AI, you'll be replaced by someone who uses AI. just don't be resistant to it. I think there are many opportunities to learn now, whether it's through listening to podcasts like this, reading books, attending various meetings. There are many chapter meetings in various organizations in our project world. There are conferences, there are communities. I just think I encourage people to come out. You don't keep your head down, and maybe if you're 6 months away from retirement, forget it. But anything else, it's exciting, and that's what drove me to write the book in the very first place. I think my first book, The Lazy Project Manager, was about working smarter, not harder, and efficiency. And when I looked at AI, I thought this is great. This is going to make that come even truer now, that it's going to allow you to work even smarter. So my suggestion to anybody is go and learn, go and find out, go and talk about it to people, challenge it for sure. Have a open but have a challenging mind. But it's a very exciting journey ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Be inquisitive. Peter, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Okay, thank you very much.